Good morning to all of you. Mr. Pranav Mehta, Chairman, Global Solar Council and Chairman, National Solar Energy Federation of India. Mr. Shailendra Roy, CEO and Managing Director, L&T Power. Mr. Maulik Jasubhai, our gracious host. Chemtech Foundation have been kind of promoting the cause of chemical and energy technologies year after year. So thank you for inviting me. Mr. A.K. Jha, the convener of this particular meeting, and Mr. Saxena, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me begin by, as I said, thanking and complimenting Chemtech Foundation for their, what shall I say, very sustained efforts in the domain of chemical industry, but also of energy industry. I was more deeply associated with this effort some years back, and I have seen the great success with which they have been organizing these events. And as Shri Maulik Jasubhai mentioned, I think a very impressive component of such events has been their student program. I wonder whether you have student program even in this. You have. So, and I would encourage some of you who can find time to, in fact, take part. It's a very refreshing experience. Talking about the theme of this particular meeting, clean and affordable power, innovation, integration, and adoption. As we heard from previous speakers, I think the whole world is going through energy transitions, and I think nobody can escape those transitions because we are living in an interdependent world. For India, I think the situation is even more critical because depending on the energy mix that we adopt, and it's certainly true in the current phase, we are more dependent on energy sources from outside, and so we are driven by the transitions which are taking place, and so it's a kind of, we are in a reactive mode. Something happens the world over, we have to make sure of our survival, so we find ways of doing this, and it is in a way inevitable. In terms of energy, if you really look at what are the key challenges before us as a country, and I'm not talking about only electricity, I'm talking about energy as a whole, then to my mind, the biggest key challenge for us is the money outgo because of energy and energy-related imports into our country. Even after accounting for the multiplier effect of energy, you put in energy into the national system and it has a multiplier effect. But even after accounting for that, you would find that a country like India, we can't afford, we can ill afford a rapidly growing outgo for energy imports. and it would become unsustainable in not too distant a future. Partly because the energy resources themselves are at a stretch, but also because the cost of energy sources, uh, leave gas as an exception, but the cost of energy resources will keep rising. There might be ups and downs in short term, but uh, I think in the long term we have to create strategies where the import dependence of energy, uh, I don't think we can eliminate that, but we should be able to significantly reduce. The second big challenge before us is this aspect of energy security, where a large country, our continuous consumption of energy is large, and should there be a disruption of any kind, and in fact, coronavirus is one such disruption, but you could have disruptions of a variety of kind, and if it affects the energy supply, the whole economy will get a very severe jolt. And so, I think energy security is a very important issue, and we can't be oblivious of that. The third key problem, of course, which everybody talks about, is this issue about climate change. So we should decarbonize energy systems to the maximum extent possible. I think it is for us to decide whether we will follow the world and pay the price that comes, or be little proactive and find out what we can do, where we can leverage our own strengths and make our life in the context of energy scenario somewhat more comfortable. And I would urge this body, all of you are people in energy segment, to think seriously about the segments you are involved. Some of you may be involved in electricity, some of you may be involved in transportation, and so on. But I think there are niche areas in each one of those segments where you can think differently compared to rest of the world, and act in a manner that the energy scene in the country gets eased out to the extent you can. And I think this is a serious matter. We normally don't have that habit. We look at everything in terms of the immediate financials. And immediate financials may be good for the time being. You may make money for some time, but you may get jolts. And but of course, as we are going into energy transitions, I think all these transitions will be driven if we don't drive them. I would like to make a few points in this context, and some very fundamental points in this context. First, let us begin with the sustainability and security issues. Now, by far the biggest challenge as far as energy thing is concerned is, for us, the challenge is oil and gas. We import most of our oil and we import significant part of our gas. Now, just recognize two issues. One, that with the advent of 2G technology, the surplus agriculture residue is used for a variety of things, but the surplus agri residue and its energy potential, we can look at it in the context of bioethanol, or largely speaking bio-crude, but its energy equivalence is roughly around 20% of the total crude that we import. Give and take plus minus 5%, 10%, but is of that order. Today, if you go and look at the technologies, maybe you will get a conclusion that they are not viable. Government has come out with a scheme where government is prepared to bridge a significant viability funding gap. But I think it's important that we, on one side, improve technology, improve the financials, on other side, leverage the government assistance. But if we can utilize this agri residue, you are addressing a problem to the extent of 20% of the crude that country imports, which is not small. Now what happens if you don't use this? Farmers who do multi-cropping, they want their fields to be cleared in a matter of days. And so they can't wait for, their own manual cutting, clearing the field. And so we have this problem of putting that material on fire and then the degradation of air quality. And so we have a double problem. Now, not that addressing this problem will solve the entire air quality problem, but it will make, again, a significant difference, maybe 30-35%, particularly in the concerned season, it can make that difference. It can also make a huge difference to rural economy because it can add a bit of supplementary income to the farmers. It can grow a different industry of collection of biomass, pre-processing that, supplying it, and it's already happening in the context of bioenergy, biomass-based power plants. So my first point is we should do everything, and I think the technology is largely known, and I think it is for industry to come forward, integrate that. There is a bit of risk. It's not ready-made technology as you sign a technology transfer agreement. Even that is available at some places, but not everywhere. But I think it is for industry now to take lead and address this problem to the extent of around 20%, which is a large contribution. Second part is, the rural kitchens in India, they all have been running on either firewood or cow dung. Now that energy is not accounted in the calculation of commercial energy. But that, if you look at the quantum of that energy, that is another 20% of the total energy. Now we have a very welcome scheme of Ujjwala where we are supplying gas to rural kitchens so that you have this proper air quality in our kitchens. It is related to health of women. So we are addressing this issue about environment, air quality, convenience in cooking by supply of Ujjwala. But remember, this would mean on one side we are talking about reduction of import of energy. This would mean additional 20% extra import of energy to be able to supply that much of gas. Now, I'm not suggesting that the jungle should be cut, but the same equivalent, either cow dung or conventional biomass, if it is converted to gas in a decentralized mode and supplied to rural kitchen, it will address both the problem. It will address the problem of kitchens and it will address the issue of avoiding that much extra energy import. So that will add another 20%. So it comes to 40% of import that is taking place or would otherwise take place. The next big thing that really should happen in my view is a rapid transition from oil economy to gas economy. You must be reading in newspaper the cost of gas, thanks to shale gas technology becoming very prominent, at the point of source, the cost of gas is dead cheap, practically nothing. Now, of course, by the time it comes to India and all, it adds significantly. But even so, I'm sure today many gas companies are wondering, our old contracts, the gas is probably more expensive than what can be available today. The short point is, it is again a part for the business to take initiative and carry out investments in the supply chain. Because if you don't do that, then tomorrow the cost available to us will become. But you create that captive supply chain infrastructure, and you will find that you will be able to gas at a much lower price. Even otherwise, the gas horizon is better compared to oil horizon worldwide, and I think also in India. And so, India today, the share of gas in our energy economy is far too less compared to the global standards, which is roughly about 26, 27%. We are, I think, only about 6, 7% at this moment. So I think there must be a rapid change to gas economy in India. And that is something which I think it's already part of government policy, but government and industry together can make this happen. So if you do this, I think several, shifting to gas also contributes to cleaner or contribution towards clean energy, because CO2 emission is that much lower. The next I would like to say, I'd like to come to transportation, for example. We have a lot of flip-flop in our policies. So far, transportation has been on diesel, gasoline. Now we're talking about transiting to, for example, bioethanol, taking a reasonable share of gasoline. Now, to say that we would move everything to electrical transport is a near impossibility. I normally don't indulge in bets, but on this issue I can take bets. Because there are technology limitations, and I think you all know, I don't have to elaborate that. So I think there is going to be a place for everything. The current mode of transportation, the hybrids, where you can extend the range to a much larger level. So between electrical and IC engine hybrids. And now with the advent of fuel cells, I think hydrogen-driven transportation, that is electric transportation powered by electricity coming from fuel cells, which are fueled by hydrogen, and that hydrogen derived from biomass, it looks to me that is cost competitive to diesel transportation. So if somebody starts and organizes your configuration well, you can show that compared to the transportation by diesel buses or diesel trucks, you can straight away switch on to hydrogen transportation, which is basically electric and which is clean. Coming from biomass, it is 100% clean. And I think India should look for such transitions, not wait for the rest of the world to do that and then copy, because by that time we would have lost precious time. And I think we should anyway work to opportunities that exist here, and not to be a customer for serving the interest of opportunities elsewhere, which I suspect has been happening in a large measure. So I would strongly urge that to do. I'll make one last point and stop. We heard in the previous presentation a point about the decentralized grids. I think time has come. Today, our home lighting has become largely LED driven, and we have seen how much of benefit it has created. Most of the other appliances in our household can easily run on DC, or for that matter, many of them are inherently DC and we convert them to AC. For example, the television, our computers, and so on and so forth. So it looks to me, yeah, in the old times you say everything, all these appliances were in fact DC. Uh, Advantage in terms of transmission of electricity and advantage in terms of the induction motor, robust induction motor, really facilitate the transition to AC systems. Now you have BLDC and done on a large scale, you can bring that cost to as low as normal induction motors. And many people have shown that, people in fan industry and all, where they have shown that DC fans you can buy at the same rate more or less as AC fan. And mind you, these motors at part load are more efficient than AC motors. So if you have at the utilization end, whether it is a individual household or a complex like this, if your internal systems are all DC and you have the long distance transmission, you have AC, and you have a transition at that level between AC and DC, and then you have rooftop to add, then you actually save the cost of solar energy because you don't have to invert. You produce solar, adjust your panels to give the right voltage, and directly deliver into the appliances. I think there is a huge saving both in terms of capital cost as well as the energy efficiency. And I think this is a transition which will happen. Only thing is whether we'll wait that to happen in other countries or we'll drive it, because India is a huge market and I think Indian industry can drive this. And if you do that, it will actually create a huge pull for renewable energy. And if you, with that renewable energy pull, you will make a very good combination. Right now, renewable energy integration, and in fact that's the theme of this conference, very rightly done, but renewable energy integration is going to be the challenge in times to come. If you have, those who have followed what has happened in Germany, Germany is a rich country, but if you look at the total money that the German taxpayer is paying because of that integration is huge. And in fact, I would want you to ponder over where the Indian taxpayer can afford that. Also recognize that Germany is sitting in a European Union grid. And a good part of, if there is a deficit or surplus during the day, they freely exchange with other countries. So to say that Germany has done this and to imagine that India will be able to do this, I think it is not possible. Being a nuclear man, I have to make some points about nuclear. Now we all recognize Germany has kind of making a big transition to renewable, and they are going to shut down nuclear. And one of the big driver for that was Fukushima. Fukushima happened in Japan. Japan, they have decided their policy duly approved by their parliament, and they have retained nuclear as one of the key components of their energy mix. So something which Germany has done, because something which happened in Japan, Japan is not doing. And Japan is the country where the sensitivity about nuclear is the highest. So I think you should think about this issue. And the reason is simple. Japan is a small, isolated country which depends on energy imports nearly 100%. And how can Japan ensure its energy security? I don't want to go again in too much of detail, but I think when you decide policies for the country, just don't get driven by these temporary logics. Each country has to decide its own energy policy, energy mix. And I think in Indian context, in the context of energy, renewable energy integration, having a minimum base load in the grid is a must. India is a large grid, and today the percentage in the grid is small, so it's okay. But once you reach something like 30%, 50%, 60%, you would feel you may have to invest as much as you have invested in the entire energy domain to stabilize the grids. Somebody should really work out this cost. And so it's my strong suggestion, with, of course, one conclusion is coal is not going anywhere. So that, but putting coal plants under distress, saying there is renewable energy available and so you back out, we are losing returns, getting returns from our own assets. It's all public assets, and this country cannot afford this. So I think this renewable energy integration needs a much deeper look, and going forward, that base load has to be necessarily, you have to move from the coal to clean energy, and obviously nuclear will have its own role there. So this whole dynamics of renewable energy integration must be seen in much greater detail and not in a kind of blinkered view on a superficial manner. And I would urge now, because this conference is going to devote much of its time on this issue, to discuss this issue threadbare. Thank you very much.